We have some pretty significant breaking news from the Vancouver Canucks. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is being bought out. We'll discuss how it affects their cap positively and negatively and review the trade that brought him to Vancouver. All on coming up next. So welcome back to another video here, Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, the buyout window is officially open in the NHL. We found out earlier today that nobody was being placed on waivers for the purpose of an NHL buyout. So, of course, we thought maybe we wouldn't see any of these today. But any players who had a no-move clause don't require waivers. So, in that case, we did get news later into the day here that the Vancouver Canucks have opted to buy out defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Of course, he still has 4 years left on his contract, so it's going to impact their salary cap for 8 years. How it works is he's bought out for 2/3 of the money in real dollars, and it's spread out over twice the period of time. So the Vancouver Canucks will save $9.67 million in actual real dollars spent on this contract. Of course, his cap hit was reduced because there was a bit of retention on the Arizona Coyotes side when that trade was completed. So they will be impacted here as well. So essentially how this is going to work, and we'll put this here on the screen for you, but in the year one, they're going to have substantial cap savings. Their cap hit in the first year is only going to be down to $147,000. So they're going to save $7.1 million in cap space for the upcoming 23-24 season. Now in year two, they're going to save $4.9 million. The cap hit at that point will be reduced to $2.35 million. In years 3 and 4, they're going to save $2.5 million with a cap hit of $4.77. So for the next 4 years, instead of having him on the books, there will be a reduced amount. The only problem, like I said, with these buyouts, it is spread over twice the period of time. So they're going to have Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the books for not only those 4 years, but an additional 4 years. So years 5, 6, 7, and 8, they will have a cap hit of dead cap space in the amount of $2.13 million. So obviously that hurts. Now, do they need to do this? I think they kind of did in a way. They're still kind of, working out the old mistakes from the old regime here. This trade is probably going to go down as one of the worst, not only in Canucks history, maybe one of the top 5, I'd say, at least in NHL history. It's really all around bad deal. Now, Arizona, like I said, also is going to be impacted here. Obviously, they retain some money on the contract, so they're going to have also a small cap hit for the next 8 years for this. And not only that, when you retain salary and the contract is bought out, it's going to impact their ability to buy or retain money, on other contracts. You're only allowed to have 3 contracts on your books that have retained salary. And this is going to tie up one of those spots for 8 years. Now, we know the Coyotes and some other teams that have been lower in the standings and had, trying to weaponize their cap space might have been willing to, broker deals with other teams. And obviously, they'll say, well, we'll retain some money on this contract to get some extra draft picks, things like that. Well, they're only allowed to have 3 contracts on your books that have retained salary. So, not that they're going to be unable to do this at all, but when they're making their own trades or their ability to broker other deals will be impacted, because this is going to tie up one of those 3 spots for a long, long time, 8 whole years. So that is going to suck for the Coyotes, even though that wasn't their decision. But those are the repercussions when you trade these contracts, retain salary, and things of that nature. So obviously, Ekman-Larsson was, he was overpaid for a long time. And it's not his fault, but at the end of the day, he was paid like a top pair defenseman, and he never lived up to it. And that's just the bottom line. They give him all kinds of clauses in his contract as well to give him the power and where he'll play and trade protection, all that as well. And it just really hindered and limited their ability here. Obviously, I think he fared okay in Vancouver, but not good enough to the point that you can justify having this cap hit of over $7 million on your salary cap. Now, let's take a quick look back here at the trade. Of course, this trade brought Oliver Ekman-Larsson and his teammate in Arizona, Connor Garland, to the Vancouver Canucks in 2021. So this was 2 years ago, ahead of the 2021 NHL draft. And going back to the Coyotes was 3 contracts that the Canucks obviously viewed as being bad contracts, players they were anxious to move on from. But the problem here is that all three of these players only had 1 year left. So we're talking about Antoine Roussel, Louis Eriksson, and Jay Beagle. They're all highly priced, overpaid bottom six forwards. Louis Eriksson was a mistake from long before that. Of course, Roussel and Beagle were overpaid bottom six forwards that Jim Benning had brought in. But they were down to 1 year. If they wouldn't have made this trade, kept their draft picks a year later, so in 2022, they would have been home free and had all this extra cap space. They could have went out shopping with other players. They could have kept their first round pick, which Arizona selected Dylan Gunter, who's going to be a real good player, a top goal scoring winger. They also gave up a 2022 second round pick and a 2023 seventh round pick. So 3 draft picks, including a first and second rounder, and 3 players who they didn't want, but they only had 1 year left. Now instead, they bring in Ekman-Larsson and Garland. There's been lots of talk that they're going to be trading Garland to, or trying to. They've had a hard time with it. So they basically get 2 players that nobody wanted. At the time, the Garland contract didn't look too bad. And it's not terrible. There's much worse contracts other than Connor Garland, but it just, they wanted to get rid of Louis Eriksson for years. And they basically traded for the defensive, version of him. That's basically what they did. It's just an all-around terrible, terrible trade. And now the Canucks are going to be impacted on the books cap-wise for another 8 years after already having them for 2. So the Ekman-Larsson contract is going to play a role in their management's cap management here for 10 years when you're all said and done, when they could have just had 1 more year of those other 3 guys and been home free to get some flexibility and to do other things. It's just that simple. The window for buyouts opens now, of course, starting today, closes on June 30th. So, of course, if a player has a no-move clause, they do not need waivers to be bought out. They can just process the buyout. If they don't have that kind of protection in their contract, then you'll hear about them going on waivers for the purpose of contract termination, and then the buyout will be effective the next day. So we'll see. I guarantee you there's plenty more players that are rumored to possibly be looking at this year. So we will see what happens. I know Ekman-Larsson's agent was asked if they were surprised, if they'd seen this coming, how they were feeling. And he said Ekman-Larsson, after the end of the season, of course, in his exit meeting, talked to management and coaches and did not think in a million years this was going to happen. But obviously the Canucks have made the very difficult decision to proceed here with this buyout. But short term, though, even though they're going to have him on the books for a long, long time, this year and next year especially, they're going to have a huge chunk of additional cap space. So that is going to be very, very good. Now, hopefully this time that they don't screw up how they allocate that cap space and put it towards a player that's worth that kind of money. Because like I said, they get rid of those other 3 players. They bring in Ekman-Larsson, they bring in Garland, and they were no further ahead. They were further behind. Like, the previous regime in Vancouver was absolutely terrible. And I think we knew that for a while, but sometimes you don't realize just how bad until you see the long-term effects. And now this is what we're seeing here today. So let me know your thoughts on the Ekman-Larsson buyout in Vancouver. What do you think they'll do with the cap space? What other players around the NHL do you expect to be in this same predicament over the next 2 weeks as buyout season is officially upon us? Let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments. We'll talk about it further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.